Coming up on Locked On Dodgers, a talking head from MLB Network said something dumb? Go figure. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about Craig Kimbrel and his role in the Dodgers postseason bullpen, if there is one. And a lot of people say that Hanser Alberto is the National League's version of Shohei Ohtani. I'm going to tell you who is actually the National League version of Shohei Ohtani. So let's get Locked On Dodgers.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, Dodger fans. This is Locked On Dodgers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. Remember, this show is free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube simply by searching for Locked On Dodgers. Or even better, go ahead and subscribe wherever you're watching or listening right now, and then you will never miss a day because you know we're not going to. If this is your first time watching or listening, my name is Jeff Snider. My co-host is Samperio, although it's just me today. One last time before we jump into the postseason next week and you get both of us most days. Vince and I are both lifelong Dodger fans just like you are. We've also both spent time covering the Dodgers in the press box and the locker room, so we're not quite Dodger insiders, but we bring you the smart fans' perspective on our boys in blue every weekday morning. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. And I want to jump in right away. I try to be nice in general and on this podcast. I'm a nice person. I believe that people deserve the benefit of the doubt. I really do try to be nice. And so I'm going to try to be nice here. And so I'm going to start by saying Harold Reynolds was a pretty good baseball player. Only player other than Ricky Anderson to lead the American League in stolen bases in the 1980s. Did you know that? 1987, Harold Reynolds led the league. He was a good ball player. He seems like he's probably a pretty nice guy. I think I'd enjoy having dinner with him, even talking baseball with him. All right, now that we got that out of the way, let's talk about him as a baseball analyst. Air quotes, analyst. Harold Reynolds is not good at his job. He says a lot of dumb things. And I'm not talking things that I disagree with. I think reasonable, intelligent people can disagree on things. I think that's one of the beauties of baseball is that people can have different opinions. My issue with Harold Reynolds is when he says things that are clearly not thought out at all. It's one thing to have a different opinion, but when it's clear that your opinion is based on nothing other than pulling something out of your butt, and when it's what you get paid to do, it rubs me the wrong way. So I have issues with Harold Reynolds and his analysis. A couple examples going back before I get to what he said recently. Back in 2017, you remember Chris Taylor came out of nowhere that year and was like one of the brightest spots on the best Dodger team we'd seen in decades. Well, in late August that year, at the time, Chris Taylor had a 923 OPS. He was literally probably the best hitter on the Dodgers team at that point. And Harold Reynolds said that Taylor probably shouldn't make the postseason roster because he hits right-handed, and they need more guys who can hit against righty pitchers. He said Jock Peterson should be on the roster and starting instead of Chris Taylor. Jock Peterson, who at the time had just come back from the minor leagues. Now, we remember Jock Peterson actually ended up having a good postseason in 2017, but not because he started over Chris Taylor. They found a place for Jock to play. But Chris Taylor, and the reasoning for it was what bothered me. When he said because Chris Taylor was a righty and they need guys who hit righties. Taylor was actually a little bit better against righties than lefties that year. Like, this is stuff you can look up on the internet. It's right there. It's all available. Updated daily. It's like real time available. And Harold Reynolds couldn't be bothered. About a month later, right before the end of the season, Reynolds was saying that Yasiel Puig was only going to play against lefties in the postseason. Puig had a 592 OPS against lefties that year. Again, something anybody could look up. Anybody who watched the Dodgers knew it was well publicized that Yasiel Puig was terrible against lefties that year. And, for a month you could say, okay, well, it's just a weird thing. For a whole season? No, I think we've decided. And Puig had even come out and said that some adjustments he made to hit righties better affected how he hits lefties. He had admitted that he was bad against lefties. It's just things like that. There was another one earlier this year. Harold Reynolds on MLB Network said that Jake Arrieta won the Cy Young Award in both 2015 and 2016, which was probably news to, among other people, Jake Arrieta and Max Scherzer, who actually won it in 2016. Anyway, so there's things that, like, you can just look these things up. I don't expect everybody to know everything, but I do expect if you get paid to talk about baseball and there's a specific thing you're going to talk about, maybe look up the stats. Make sure that you're saying something that's not demonstrably false. I'm not talking differences of opinions. I'm talking falsehoods, like Chris Taylor can't hit righties and Jake Arrieta won the Cy Young Award in 2016. These things, Anyway, so Harold Reynolds just yesterday was on the Dan Patrick Show, and he was asked about the Dodgers being favored to win the World Series. And Harold said, well, I think they're probably highly favored, but I think they're overrated with the favoritism, which is a heck of a phrase anyway, overrated with the favoritism. Like, I don't know. It's kind of a clue. Okay, this person is trying to sound smarter than he probably is. He's trying to use bigger words. But, we'll give him benefit of the doubt. He's a professional, so he probably has a good reason for thinking they're overrated, right? He said, I'm a little concerned about their starting pitching. I think the pitching is not where it was at. You lose Walker Buehler. That was a huge blow to them. And Scherzer's now with the Mets. So you look at the staff from last year that didn't get all the way there. They're 2 down. I just don't see it. Okay, Harold, tell me you haven't watched the Dodgers this year without telling me you haven't watched the Dodgers this year. Your evidence, your reason for thinking the Dodgers pitching is overrated is because they don't have Max Scherzer, who they haven't had all year, and they don't have Walker Buehler, who they haven't had for most of the year, and when they did, he wasn't good. The Dodgers literally just finished leading the major leagues in fewest runs allowed for a whole season without Max Scherzer, without Walker Buehler. What they have, it's one thing, give me a specific. Say, I'm not sure Clayton Kershaw's back is going to hold up. I'm concerned about Tyler Anderson's lack of strikeouts. Is Tony Gonsolin going to be healthy? Talk about the pitchers on the team. Don't tell me the reason they're not going to be good is because of 2 guys they haven't had all year while they've been excellent. That's just bad. It's uninformed. I think you guys get what I'm saying, right? I don't want to come across as an offended Dodger fan. He had the nerve to say something about the Dodgers. I don't care. You think the Dodgers are overrated? Great. But if you have reasons for it, they better be better than Walker Buehler and Max Scherzer. And then he talked about the offense. He said, the top 3 guys in the lineup, I think, have a chance to be Hall of Fame potential players. Mookie, Freddie Freeman, Trey Turner, incredible. But there's a drop-off after that. You're right, Harold. There is a drop-off. Every team would have a drop-off after those 3 guys. With the Dodgers, you drop down to the best hitting catcher in baseball, Will Smith and his 120 OPS plus. And then you get down to Justin Turner's 116 OPS plus. And that's counting his terrible first month and a half of the season. Max Muncy had an 858 OPS over the last 2 months of the season. Trace Thompson was 901 for the whole season. There's question marks offensively. Is Cody Bellinger, he was good for the last 2 weeks of the season. Is he going to be good? There's plenty of question marks. Chris Taylor, can he bounce back? But this team scored more runs than any team in baseball. And that's not just the top 3. You have 7 guys who drove in over 60 runs this season and 8 guys who scored over 60 runs this season. 5 guys hit 20 homers plus Belly with 19. 9 guys had 20 or more doubles. You have the top 3. They're the big 3 for a reason. So technically, this is one of the things that's technically true. Yes, there's a drop-off after those big 3, like any team would have. But I'll put the Dodgers 4 through 9 against most teams 4 through 9 who don't have that top 3 at the top. It's just baffling to me that you can watch a team or not watch a team, as Harold's case may be, lead the major leagues in runs scored and fewest runs allowed, and then come out and say, I think their pitching's bad and their hitting's bad, and therefore they're overrated. That's my Harold Reynolds impression. Uncanny, isn't it? Anyway, I love disagreements. I'll even engage in a heated discussion sometimes, but not with Harold Reynolds because he doesn't bring anything to the fight. It's like picking on somebody who, I don't know how to go with that analogy without getting offensive to Harold Reynolds. Look, like I said, he was a good ball player, seems like a nice guy. He has no business being a baseball analyst if he doesn't know how to look things up and if he doesn't know how to watch the game and actually analyze it. That's my thoughts on Harold Reynolds and this particular discussion. So, if you're betting Dodgers or the field in the World Series, take the field because that's how baseball works. But do it educatedly. So I'm going to come back in a minute. I am going to talk about Craig Kimbrel and his role in the Dodgers bullpen in the postseason, if he has one. So thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning, and please keep it Locked On Dodgers. BetOnline.net is your number one source for football betting info this season. Find all the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in-depth articles and analysis on every game you can find. And as always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all your sport wagering information, with live betting and up-to-the-minute scores for every sport out there. The fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite games and events, including MLB, MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to betonline.net or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, I am back, and I want to talk a little bit about Craig Kimbrel. I know we've spent a lot of time talking about Craig Kimbrel on this podcast throughout the season. I spent a lot of time during the season talking about how I expected him to get better because he still had good stuff. And then he did get better. And then he struggled again. And, I still think, I think you could look and see that game in San Diego where he walked 3 guys in the 10th inning to lose the game. I think you could look at that as kind of an outlier game over the last, couple months. He was really, really good, and then he struggled. He blew a game in Arizona with that 2-run homer. He gave up a couple home runs, and he thought, okay, is this the new thing? And then he walked those 3 guys, and that was when finally he lost his job as closer, and it was like, okay, let's see if he can do anything anywhere else in the bullpen and maybe earn a spot on the postseason roster. One thing to remember, even though we talk about he walked 3 guys in the 10th inning, he walked 2 guys. They intentionally walked Juan Soto, and that was the right move. But an intentional walk is a walk on the manager. It shows up on the pitcher stats, but Dave Roberts walked one of those guys. Craig Kimbrel walked 2 guys. Yeah, and one of them was Jorge Alfaro. So, again, like I said that night, I know Craig Kimbrel's not going to get benefit of the doubt from me or anyone else when he walks the unwalkable Jorge Alfaro. So I'm not defending that, but I think it is useful to be accurate in how we describe things. So, but since then, he's pitched 4 innings, allowed one hit, 2 walks, and no runs. He in the last game of the season on Wednesday, he pitched a 1-2-3 8th inning, struck out all 3 batters, and he did get a couple favorable calls from the umpire. He could have easily walked 1 or 2 guys that inning instead of striking him out. Not saying he should have, but he could have. But the fact is he struck out all 3 batters he faced. That's a big deal. That's actually the first time this season that Craig Kimbrel has done that. He's had 3 strikeout innings this season, but not 1, 2, 3 innings. So he's done 1, 2, 3. He's done 3 strikeouts. He hadn't done both in the same game. But Craig Kimbrel's not the closer anymore. And the fact is Craig Kimbrel's role in the postseason is very, very questionable. But after he struck out the side in the 8th, Juan Toribio, who covers the Dodgers for MLB.com, he just tweeted out, he said, Craig Kimbrel strikes out the side in the 8th. The plot thickens. And it's kind of interesting that the plot isn't, the plot that's thickening isn't, is he going to be the closer? It's, is he going to make the NLDS roster? And so I just want to dig into this a little bit. I've talked about some in the past. I know not everybody's watching and listening every day, but still, I'm not going to just repeat everything I've said before because things change from day to day. And one of the things that changed since the last time we talked about it is Craig Kimbrel has thrown 4 shutout innings since then, and that is data to consider. But there's 13 available slots for pitchers on the roster, and 11 of them are basically set in stone at this point. You got Julio and Kershaw and Anderson as your starters. You got Gonsolin and Heaney, who are starters, who are going to be on the roster. Not sure who's going to start game 4, how they're going to attack that game. But, so you've got those 5 starters who are definitely on the roster. And then you've got Evan Phillips, Alex Vesia, Brusdar Graterol, Yency Almonte, Chris Martin, and Tommy Kahnle. I think those 6 guys are locks for the roster. All of this, of course, is assuming all 11 of those guys are healthy. Right now, it looks like they all are. So that's where we're at. We've got 11 guys out of the 13 spots, which means just 2 spots left. And you've got Blake Trinan, who is rehabbing, and Dave Roberts has said if he's healthy, he's going to be on the roster. So we might be down to 1 spot, but right now we'll leave it for 2. You got Blake Trinan, got Dustin May, who's also rehabbing, Caleb Ferguson, David Price, Craig Kimbrel. Those are your 5 guys fighting over those 2 spots. If we assume Trinan does get healthy and is ready, let's put him on there and say you got 4 guys fighting for 1 spot. Dustin May would make a lot of sense, but Dave Roberts kind of walked back the last few days whether May is guaranteed a spot on the roster. Basically, I think they're looking at he made 6 starts, and the first 2 were pretty good, but they were also against the Marlins. And then after that, it was kind of hit and miss, and he struggled with command in his last start. Last start was maybe his worst one of the 6, and then he was hurt. And so he hasn't had a chance to make those last 2 starts and make progress. And so all they have is these simulated games and stuff. And it might just be that Dave Roberts isn't comfortable enough saying, I know Dustin May's command issues are fixed enough that I'm comfortable putting him in a postseason game. And when you think about it, this pitching staff, everybody I listed is really good. Like, you have guys, any one of those relievers, I could see them closing out a postseason game. And so, like, having Dustin May there's a potential for it being like, oh, I'm not sure if I trust him. Well, he's not going to get used. Then why should he be on the roster? So then you got Caleb Ferguson, who was really, really good for the first month or so after he came off the injured list, coming back from Tommy John surgery. He has struggled lately. His overall numbers are still good, but he struggled again in his last appearance of the season. He's not the lights out guy. He still has very good stuff. And we saw he got out of a jam that he created for himself. He has strikeout stuff. He's got it. And, if they want another lefty reliever besides Alex Vesia, Caleb Ferguson has the edge there. David Price is also left-handed, doesn't have the stuff that Ferguson has that veteran leadership, et cetera, et cetera. I still really don't see a place for Price on this postseason roster with all these other guys available. I think Price is a great guy to have in the dugout for that veteran leadership. And maybe, maybe in the division series, a shorter series. I don't know. I don't really see a place for David Price. And then you got Craig Kimbrel. And Craig Kimbrel is what he is. We know what he is at this point, but we also don't know what to expect from him because he's been really good at times this year. He's been really bad. He's been in between. And if Kimbrel, his stuff is still good. And I know you guys, if you listen every day, you're tired of me talking about Craig Kimbrel's stuff still being good. So I won't say it. I'm going to say it one more time. Craig Kimbrel's stuff is still good. Okay. I won't say it again, but that stuff, it means that if he's on, he fit right in that bullpen on Wednesday's game. Coming in the 8th inning, strike out 3 guys. It's like, if you didn't know what Craig Kimbrel has been through this year, what he's put us through this year, you would have thought, man, that's a great tool to have in the 8th inning. And when Kimbrel's right, that's what he is. He's a great tool. And so he might have the edge. It might be the kind of the same mindset as Dustin May. I don't know if I trust him, but you will have occasional spots where, okay, we're up by 4 runs. I think the Dodgers will have a 4-run lead in this postseason at some point. And then you go, okay, let's throw Kimbrel in there and keep giving him these spots. And if he can throw a 1, 2, 3, 7th inning for you with a 4-run lead, that's a great low leverage spot for a guy like Kimbrel. You do still need low leverage relievers in the bullpen. So even if you only trust Kimbrel to be low leverage, he's still a pretty good option there. Based on performance, Kimbrel's probably the least deserving of those 4 guys. But past performance doesn't guarantee future results, and that goes both ways. That means, we always hear that phrase, meaning, well, past good results aren't going to guarantee future good results. But it also means past bad results don't guarantee future bad results, especially when you're dealing with a guy like Kimbrel, who, I can't say the phrase again because you guys will get mad at me because I promise not to mention his stuff again. But when he attacks the strike zone, he has potential to be an effective reliever, especially in one of those lower leverage spots. So it's going to be interesting. That is where the plot thickens, as Juan Toribio said. Craig Kimbrel could sneak his way onto this postseason roster. And it's kind of crazy. In March, when they traded for him, if you had told us we would talk about, is he even going to make the postseason roster? We would have thought, what in the world happened? And that's kind of the answer, the question asked with Kimbrel. He's almost one of the only, from the pitching side of things, he's basically the only storyline this year that's been bad. Everything else has been good. Kimbrel's been bad, but he also has potential to be good. And so the question is whether Dave Roberts and the front office believe that Kimbrel can do it consistently enough to help now that the games matter again. And I don't know the answer to that, but it wouldn't shock me if Kimbrel ended up on this roster. And if Kimbrel specifically is the reason that Dave Roberts is backtracking on Dustin May, saying he's not necessarily guaranteed a spot. That's my thoughts on Kimbrel. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I know a lot of people who watch this on YouTube. I see your YouTube comments. I know the funny nickname is to call him Craig Crumble. I get it. It's funny. But I'd love to hear your thoughts. I like I said in the first segment, I like data. I like information. And so I acknowledge that Kimbrel statistically is the least deserving of the four. And my reasoning for thinking he might end up on the roster is good stuff, has been good at times, potential low leverage reliever. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, whether it's in the comments on YouTube, through Twitter, whatever you want to do. We'll give you all the contact info at the end of the episode. I'm going to come right back and I'm going to talk about who the National League version of Shohei Ohtani really is, and it's going to be somebody you don't expect. So thanks for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning, and please keep it Locked On Dodgers. Okay, I am back. I know I teased you. I'm talking all about, I'm going to tell you who the National League version of Shohei Ohtani is. People joke that that's Hanser Alberto because he pitched 11 innings this year or whatever. Obviously, that's a joke because Hanser isn't a very good hitter and isn't a very good pitcher, and Shohei Ohtani is great at both. Mine, it's a little bit more of a stretch because this guy is neither a hitter nor a pitcher. But, you know, when you talk about the Shohei Ohtani versus Aaron Judge MVP argument, people talk about the season Judge had. And it's a season that we haven't seen in, many, many years offensively. And then the counter argument is Ohtani's doing something we haven't seen ever. And some people feel like there should be almost a different category for Ohtani because as long as Ohtani is pitching and hitting and doing both well, just mathematically, he's going to be the most valuable player because he's two players in one roster spot. And, and if he's good at both things, and so you could make an argument for saying Shohei Ohtani should just be the MVP every year. And that wouldn't be fun. It would be fun for Ohtani, I guess, but even that, I think he'd even get bored with it, And so that's why right now, I'm glad I don't have to vote for American League MVP. I think I'd lean towards Aaron Judge, just because I don't think Ohtani's doing something we've never seen before is a sustainable argument because that's going to remain true, and I don't think he should just win the MVP every year. Last year, I thought it was good because he actually was the best hitter in the league last year, in addition to being a very good pitcher. And that kind of, I don't know where the line is, and that's hard, and that's why I'm glad I'm not a voter. But these same things, there's somebody in the National League who is absolutely the best at what he does, doing things we haven't seen before. And, he may not be the best at every aspect of everything, but he's so good at so many things that for me, in my opinion, the Manager of the Year award should just go to Dave Roberts every year. And that wouldn't be fun. But the fact is, Dave Roberts, I know there's people listening to this or watching this who don't think Dave Roberts is a good manager. I am going to tell you, I disagree with you. I think Dave Roberts is an outstanding manager. He's not perfect, especially in his on-field management. There are things that he does wrong. I think those are overblown. I think people think it's fun. I've said before, I think every baseball fan believes that they have the worst bullpen in baseball, the worst performance with runners in scoring position, and the worst manager. Everybody just believes that, even when it's clearly not true. There are people, you might be one of them, who think the Dodgers were terrible with bases loaded this year. They were not. They were very good with bases loaded this year. We remember the failures. We don't remember the successes. We remember Dave Roberts leaving Clayton Kershaw in the 8th inning in Game 5 of the 2019 NLDS. It was a bonehead move. It was bad, and it cost the Dodgers the World Series that year. We remember that. We don't remember all the good moves he makes along the way, and because they don't stand out. And I firmly believe that if you're going to jump on every mistake, and I'll get to the word mistake in a second, but if you're going to jump on every mistake, you need to be able to acknowledge the successes, the right decisions. Now, I've talked about this before. I'll give you my quick rundown. I don't believe there are many managerial mistakes. I think there are a lot of managerial decisions that are easy. You've got an 80% chance of being right. Hey, who should I bet leadoff? Mookie Betts or Austin Barnes? Oh, let's go with Betts today. Good call, Dave Roberts. You don't get credit for batting Mookie Betts leadoff instead of Austin Barnes because that's a decision that literally the junior college coach, people like to say, a junior college coach could manage this talented team to the World Series, and it's not true. Those are decisions the junior college coach could make. Then there's decisions that are closer. They're the 60-40 decisions or the 52-48 decisions. And those are where people love to jump on Dave Roberts and it's not unique to him. People love to jump on managers for making the quote unquote wrong decision in those situations. But the thing about, if you have a decision that has a 55% chance of being right, 45% chance of being wrong, your job is to pick the 55 as often as possible. If you do that, you're going to be very successful. But even when you pick the 55, you will be quote unquote wrong 45% of the time. Your move won't work 45% of the time, even though you made the right move. That's how baseball is. The best hitters get out 6 out of 10 times. If you send up Trayce Thompson to pinch hit, even though, let's say it's, I don't know, you send Trayce Thompson up to pinch hit for Cody Bellinger, even though Bellinger was 3 for 3, but it's a lefty on the mound, and then, Trayce Thompson, he hits a line drive right at the center fielder and he gets out. And people say, well, everybody knows Trayce has reverse splits. He doesn't hit lefties as well as he hits righties. And Bellinger was hot. Why would you take out the hot hitter? All these things. There's so many things to criticize. And yet, most of the time, that's maybe the right decision. And this is a hypothetical example, But there are these decisions that even when you make the right decision, you're going to make the wrong decision. And so I believe most of the criticisms of Dave Roberts are that, or they are the classic, we can't know the alternative. So it's 2017 World Series Game 2. He takes out Rich Hill instead of letting Rich Hill face the lefty mashing top of the Astros lineup for a third time. And, and it would have worked. He handed a 3-1 lead to Brandon Morrow and Kenley Jansen to say, hold this lead for 3 innings for me. Brandon Morrow and Kenley Jansen were both lights out in 2017. 99 times out of 100, they hold that lead. If they hold that lead that game, Dodgers win the World Series. If Yasiel Puig follows his positioning chart that the coaches gave him, they hold that lead because the RBI double is a fly out to right that Brandon Morrow allowed. That game, I have feelings about that. But people will still say, pulled Rich Hill too early, and then he did it again in 2018 against the Red Sox. 2018 against the Red Sox, Rich Hill told Dave Roberts he was tired, and then Dave Roberts went out just to check on him, and Rich Hill handed him the ball. As a manager, your hands are tied there. Rich Hill took himself out of that game. It was accidentally, but that's not on Dave Roberts. So there's a lot of decisions like that, and there have been plenty of decisions I disagreed with in that 2018 World Series when he had he brought in Alex Wood, took out Pedro Baez, brought in Alex Wood. The Red Sox pinch hit for Rafael Devers with Nunez, I think. He hits a home run. I thought that was a bad move because they knew that they would pinch hit, and I would have rather had, especially because Pedro Baez was really good against lefties that year, I would have rather had Baez against Devers than Wood against Nunez. So but that doesn't mean that I'm right and Dave Roberts is wrong. I do believe that Dave Roberts went with the 45 decision instead of the 55 there. But even that, there's a difference between that and he made the wrong decision. I believe he probably made the decision that's not going to be right as often as the other decision. Everybody's going to do that. But what Dave Roberts has done consistently every year that he's been a manager is win a crap load of games. That is a manager's job. There's not much a manager can do to win a game. There's more than a manager can do to lose a game. And I think Dave Roberts deserves a lot of credit for not doing the things that lose games. And his presence in the clubhouse, his management of people cannot be overstated. He is so good at that. You have people say, well, you put together this team of all-stars, of course they're going to be successful. They're not the first team of all-stars. Freddie Freeman, Mookie Betts, and Trey Turner at the top of that lineup, that could have been a recipe for disaster. Guess what? Mookie Betts and Trey Turner are both leadoff hitters, and Freddie Freeman is a number 2 hitter. 2 out of those 3 guys aren't hitting in the spot they're used to hitting in, and it was their idea because Dave Roberts put them in a position to say, hey, guys, you guys are 3 superstars. I love having the 3 at the top of the order. Help me figure out what's the best way to deploy the 3 of you because obviously we have a logjam here. So what do you guys think? And it's little things like that it's not baseball, it's people. Dave Roberts is so good at managing people, and that turns into baseball results. And yeah, he's also very good at the game management. There's room for improvement. He makes mistakes like all managers do. I believe he's getting better at those things. And I believe that he started out better than a lot of people think he was. But the fact is, Dave Roberts wins games at a record pace. The Dodgers in the last 4 years have been better than almost any team in the history of baseball. You might not like this if you're not a Dave Roberts fan. I'm going to say it. Dave Roberts is a Hall of Fame manager. He's only been going for 7 years, especially if they win another World Series this year. He punched his ticket to the Hall of Fame. Dave Roberts, if they win the World Series this year, Dave Roberts could retire the next day and he would be in the Hall of Fame as a manager. He is that good because he is the National League Shohei Ohtani. There is so much more to managing than just deciding to bat Mookie Betts leadoff instead of Austin Barnes and deciding to leave Pedro Baez in instead of bringing in Alex Wood. There's so much more to managing, and Dave Roberts is somewhere between very good and the best ever at every element of managing. And when your baseline, your floor is very good, and you've got a couple things that you're the best ever at, he's the National League Shohei Ohtani. He should be the manager of the year every single year, or they should change the definition of the award because he's the best manager in baseball. I said it. Dave Roberts is the National League's version of Shohei Ohtani. And hopefully, I said Shohei Ohtani enough that it bumps up our SEO and we get a lot of hits on this episode. But no, I believe it. I believe Dave Roberts is outstanding. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Like I said, I love debate. I brought data. I brought numbers. I brought why I believe what I believe. And I'd love to hear your thoughts either in the comments on YouTube or on social media or whatever. Email. I'll give you all that stuff in a second. I want to thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. And now for your second listen, check out Locked On MLB. MLB expert Paul Francis Sullivan brings humor, passion, and unique perspective on every team and the biggest stories around the league. Follow the #1 daily league-wide podcast, Locked On MLB, on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get podcasts. If you're not watching or listening to Locked On Dodgers every weekday morning, we would love if you had 1 or 2 days a month to your rotation. If you have friends or family who love the Dodgers like you do, please tell them about the show. You can follow us on Instagram and on Twitter at Locked On Dodgers. Vince is on Twitter at Vince Samperio. I'm on Twitter at Snider, and the DMs are open in all of those places. Our email address is lockedondodgers@gmail.com, and our phone number for voicemails or text messages is 323-863-LOCK-5625. We are here every weekday morning, and we hope you'll be here with us. When you get in your car or sit on your couch, tell your smart device to play podcast Locked On Dodgers. And remember, you don't have to agree. You just have to listen. We'll talk to you on Monday.